Meeting to order, please. Councillor McCann. I would like to bring the meeting to order, so if we can end discussion, that would be very much appreciated. Prior to the open session, council met for a closed session. It was moved by Councillor Burden and seconded by Councillor McCann that pursuant to Section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moves to a meeting closed to the public in order to address matters pertaining to C, or proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land for municipal or local board purposes, a property matter, E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, update on litigation cases with the town, F, the receiving of advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, update on litigation cases with the town, and J, educating or training council members that no member shall discuss or deal with any matter in any way that materially advances the business of council, and that was municipal finances. And that was carried and held. Okay. Any prioritization of the agenda? Can I suggest moving up 10.2.2? Okay. All right. Any other prioritization? Nope. Okay. Mover and seconder for the agenda is amended. Councillor Borneman and Councillor McCann. Council agenda for November 19th, 2019 be approved as amended. All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Mover and seconder for the minutes. Councillor Borneman, Councillor Burden. The minutes of the regular council meeting held November 5th, 2019 be approved as circulated. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. I will remind everybody that the council meetings are live streamed and that they are available on the town's website afterwards as well. Questions of staff? Councillor Borneman.
Mr. Brown, seeing as your time here is winding down, maybe you can give us one last update with respect to Wabick Street.
Through your worship, the Wabick Street is going to be paved starting tomorrow morning. We're confident that the work will be done probably, well, by the end of the day tomorrow. It will be temporarily paved as far as the splash pad along the side, as well as the temporary sidewalk to carry us over for the winter. The contractor was unable to get the concrete work done due to the temperatures and the time of year, so there will be a temporary fix to tie us to the winter. So the rest of Wabick will be paved, as well as Melvin. So I'm hopeful that Wabick Street will be open for business Thursday morning.
Good. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Brown as well. With the last snow event, we all received a lot of complaints about snow plowing, and I guess everyone had difficulties getting to work, or up hills, or down one street or another. And understandably, everyone feels that their area should be a priority. Certainly, if it's schools or doctors' offices, the hospital, Belvedere Heights. Could you explain, Mr. Brown, again, for the public's knowledge, the fact that what the limitations are that we're dealing with, that we have to be very strategic in sending people out. We can't send people out at 3 o'clock in the morning if we know the snow is going to last for 48 hours or more. And I suppose that if it came down to it, if we had the money and the tax base, we could put more people and more equipment out there. But the reality is that we can't. So can you explain how we're managing and prioritizing the plowing of the streets and the sidewalks?
Mr. Brown.
So, your worship, this is an annual event that we go through. The town of Parry Sound Council some years ago approved a winter control policy. It's available on the website. It identifies which roads are done first, which priorities are done first. That particular event I think you're speaking of, the snow didn't start falling till about 1:30 in the morning. Our staff were out at 4:30 in the morning starting plowing. We have upwards of 8 hours, depending on the location, to get to the snow before we can clear it. It's not an instant plow. I think people believe that as soon as it starts snowing, there's going to be a plow out. That doesn't happen that way. It never has it, and I don't believe it doesn't happen anywhere else. Our mandate is approved by council. We ensure that the roads are plowed according to council direction. That particular night, as I say, we were out at 4:30 in the morning. All our plows were out, all our sidewalk plows were out. I think the staff did an excellent job. People have to remember that it is winter. They have to slow down. They have to make sure that their snow tires are installed. I'm not sure what else we can do to improve the system other than putting 3 or 4 times as many vehicles on the road, trucks on the road, but that means more staff, more vehicles, and I think that that's a very expensive process. We base our plowing on traffic flows. We base our plowing on priorities. And again, this is all identified in the winter control policy that council approved a few years ago. Granted, there are some tweaking that we do on an annual basis to make sure that we look after as best we can the areas that are of concern. But we can't get to every location for everybody who starts work at different times of the day. People have to be patient. People have to remember that it's the winter. They have to slow down. They have to drive according to conditions. I think the staff are doing a very good job of what they do, but it's the first snowfall of the year, and we usually get those complaints then.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Councillor Borneman? Okay. Oh, sorry. Councillor Backman had reminded me, so she can go first and then you.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for Dave. Could you give us an update on the strategic planning process that's happening?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you. Yesterday, November 19th, we started the strategic planning process with focus groups. We had about 45 people participate in focus group sessions at yesterday afternoon and yesterday evening. That consultation is going to carry on November 26th. We have some consultants and they're going to be going into the high school, participating with classes in the high school to get a youth perspective on what the future of the community should look like. Also on November 26th, there is an open house in the evening of November 26th from 7 to 9. It's at the BOCC. That is for the general public. Anyone can come and communicate with the consultants who are looking at the strategic planning process. Council is welcome to be there in attendance as well, and senior staff are expected to be there as well to be able to assist anyone in any questions that they may have at that particular time. There is a web-based survey that is on the town's website right now. I'm very pleased with the response. We have over 180 surveys completed so far. That's been up for about a week, and I don't think that we've ever done any surveys on the website that have had that kind of response before. We will plug that some more this week, and hopefully we can get some more surveys completed by the public. It will be on the website till the evening of November 26th when we move into the open house session. At that point, the consultants are going to consolidate that information. They're going to bring it forward to the December 17th meeting for council, and that's going to be an open meeting of council, and council is going to have their opportunity to review and assess the information and provide their input at that time. From then on, the consultants are planning on going away, and in early December, they will be bringing back a finalized draft report for council's consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Borneman and then Councillor Keith.
I just wanted to go back to Mr. Brown for just a minute with respect to the snow plowing. I hope that the tweaking has reflected the relocation of the public schools in Parry Sound at this point. That was one of the issues that I heard about during that first snowfall.
Through your worship, absolutely. The tweaking had been adjusted for those schools.
Councillor Keith.
Yes, the question is for Mr. Brown, and of course it's for the snow, but I sit here and I got thinking, um, are you familiar with any community that maybe has done some sort of an education sort of project so that they are making citizens, preparing them in advance of the first snowfall to remember what to be aware of, rather than maybe if we were a little more proactive, if we did an educational campaign, we might also reap the benefits, and it might cut down on some of the stress. Has that ever been something that you're aware of in any community or familiar with?
Through your worship, I have seen some documentation on websites as well as on a Twitter page, just reminding people of their obligations to ensure that their winter tires are indeed proper winter tires and that they are to slow down. And I'd be more than happy to put that on our Twitter page as well as the town website in the future, near future.
Any further questions? No? Okay. Next, we come to the deputations and presentations portion of tonight's council meeting. Deputations are held to a maximum of 10 minutes each, including questions of clarification from council. Presentations or deputations are also subject to the same rules of conduct as members of council, and that no one shall speak disrespectfully or use offensive words or insulting expressions against any member of council, staff, or another member of the public. And please speak clearly and approximately 1 foot from the microphone. Also, if you do have a hard copy of your deputation, please provide it to the clerk, which would be very much appreciated. Now, we have one deputation that was submitted and is on our agenda for tonight. I have 4 others which have asked to speak tonight, and so that will conclude the number of deputations that I'm going to receive tonight, as I know we'll be over our time limit. So our first deputation, which is the one that is on the agenda, is from Glenda Clayton and Monica Moore, the Parry Sound Area Food Collaborative with regard to a community oven. Yes, Ms. Johnson.
Worship, we had some
Technical difficulties?
difficulties that have just arisen just in the last couple of minutes, so I'm attempting to get this sorted out, and I don't know, maybe deputations still require presentation.
Oh, right, I didn't do that. I forgot that. Okay. Yeah. Okay, actually, I forgot deputations. Sorry, correspondence. So I'm going to get correspondence, so that'll give you a few minutes to sort that out, hopefully. Read slowly.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
This evening, we only have 2 pieces of correspondence. The first is from the District of Parry Sound Violence Against Women Coordinating Committee. They have a request that the municipal office flags be lowered to half-mast on December 6, 2019, to mark the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, and specifically to remember the lives lost on December 6, 1989, of 14 young university students at l'École Polytechnique de Montréal. This request is part of a national initiative which will be taking place at all federal buildings and establishments from sunrise to sunset on December 6th. Parry Sound participation will send the important message that we are working together towards awareness and prevention of violence against women. This was circulated to Mayor and Council. Our second piece of correspondence was from Climate Action Parry Sound. They are a grassroots organization of concerned citizens committed to limiting and mitigating the effects of human-caused global warming, introducing their group to council. Their goals are to raise awareness, solicit petition signatures to be forwarded to provincial and federal governments, and support youth commitment for multi-generational demonstrations in support of Fridays for Future. They will network and collaborate with other groups and organizations in our community on lowering our carbon footprint. This also was circulated to Mayor and Council.
Okay, thank you. And there will be a resolution on the agenda with regard to the National Day of Remembrance. So that will be dealt with at that time. Uh, Do you have a visual presentation that you are going to present for your? We're willing to go ahead and do it. Okay. Okay, that would be wonderful if you could. Thank you. Well, there we go. Good. So we welcome Glenda Clayton and Monica Moore and Rick.
So I apologize for those who cannot see the screen to my left, but it will help you give a little bit of a visual of what we're talking about. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the Parry Sound and Area Food Collaborative, and we're speaking about the proposal to build a community bake oven. And now I can be heard.
Now you can
And
be
I
heard.
might have, sorry about that. A community bake oven at Mary Street Center. So the Parry Sound and Area Food Collaborative is a group of key community stakeholders and a number of very committed individual residents that work at championing the idea of healthy, sustainable food systems for the Parry Sound and area. So you're probably, hopefully, familiar with some of the work that we've done over the years, things like the Eat Around the Sound workshops, where people learn how to grow and to cook foods. Things like the alternate year harvest festival, where we have people, again, have opportunities for workshops and go out into our community and visit local farms. Something like the Grown by the Bay food map was also created through the Food Collaborative, so we can help local residents connect with local food producers. And things like on Thursday evening, we tend to run speaker series. So we have the former Environmental Commissioner of the Province of Ontario coming to speak about how climate change will potentially impact our food systems in Ontario, and that will be hosted at Mary Street on 7 o'clock. So we hope to see most of you there. It'll be informative. But also, the Food Collaborative several years ago created the Food Charter, which was the vision that helped sort of encapsulate what it is that we're trying to promote in our area in terms of healthy and sustainable food systems. And we're very pleased that and appreciate the town of Parry Sound signed on to the Food Charter, as well as all area municipalities and a number of individual, again, community stakeholders. So the community oven. This is a proposal, a dream of the Food Collaborative to have a community oven, and Mary Street Center is going to be the location for this. So we're here tonight to share with you about the project. Age-old traditions, as long as we've been grinding grain and creating flour, we have bake ovens in communities. And so it is our hope, as I say, to put one at Mary Street Center, because it really builds on some of the key aspects in the Food Charter. And the four that I'd like to highlight is it will help create economic opportunity, promoting education and skill building, foster well-being, and help celebrate culture and collaboration with a number of organizations working on the bake oven. And Monica, well.
Yeah, so if you can look at the map here of the Mary Street Center and St. James United Church, along the edge here is the wall, as we all know it, and up at the top is what I call the North Star Building. It says, I guess, the Star Building that belongs to Matt and Brenda Ryan. So that's the proposed space here between the North Star Building and our building, but back from the street. This would be available to community groups in private rentals. We're going to create oven masters who actually know how to work the oven and will be available for each of the events so that people know how to use the oven correctly. We really hope that this brings a real vibrancy to downtown. Throughout the whole year, we expect this to be used in the wintertime as well, for Canada Day pizza parties, for the Girlfriends Weekend, and maybe even having regularly scheduled bake days where people can make bread at home and bring it to the oven to be baked. There will be lots of educational opportunities, including with the schools and with workshops and all of these things that help us fulfill the food charter. So steps that we've already taken. So the owners, Matt and Brenda Ryan, have sent us a letter and said that they were all on board with this and that they would even help with some of the design, and they've been doing that, which has been great, and we want to thank them for that. We did consult with Dave Thompson, who was at one of our original meetings around this, who provided us a lot of advice, which is one of the reasons why we're coming to you. We're going to train people within the Food Collaborative to be those oven masters, and the Church Council has also endorsed this, so that they're all in as far as using that space. So the next steps that we would have to do, I mean, one is looking for your blessing, securing funds for it, which we don't think will be a difficult thing. We want to start the build in early spring of 2020 so that we can get using this oven and get baking. Well, that's our presentation. So
Okay,
there's
thank
any
you.
questions?
And if I can just add one part I meant to ask, meant to share is, these exist in many spots in Ontario, Toronto, the big cities, but also in very small communities like Elora and even tiny hamlets like McDonald's Corners near Ottawa. So it's pretty diverse in the locations that they are. So thank you for letting me
Thank
add
you.
that question.
Okay, Councillor Backman and then Councillor Keith.
I'm curious to know if you have an approximate value of funds that you need to secure to see this move forward.
Well, we had some people come and speak to us, and they have used recycled materials that were, one oven was less than $200 all in, but we're expecting to have more of a brick oven that sort of matches the architecture, and maybe Brenda, the architect, could speak to that a little bit better.
So we don't have a total cost as of yet, but what we've done is put together a materials list of everything that would be needed to build the oven, and we've put that out to all the different suppliers in the area so that we can get pricing so that each item that we need will have a value to it, and in hopes that we can get most of it donated, or you know, people say, I've got, you know, concrete blocks, things like that, you know, levels, all these things that we need to build it. We're hoping that the community will come behind it and support it.
It's a very simple structure, so it's not.
Okay. Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. When I look at this diagram, I'm just a little bit unclear. In reference to, I'm assuming that you would be heating the ovens with wood. So where would this wood be stored, and have you a contract? Like, is this wood coming from this area, or I'm just looking at those sorts of issues, because I know for some people cutting down trees is an issue also.
Yeah, we're hoping that we will get wood from not only the people who are using the stove, the oven, but also, you know, as people have wood that they have on their own properties that in the area, that they would just donate it, and we could store it right on the property.
My follow-up is, though, when I look at the diagram, I'm not really clear on whereabouts wood would be stored. Would it be stored behind, from one of the pictures I see? Would this stored behind, or like, where would it be stored? Would you be coming?
Probably next to the building. I don't know if you've ever been back there, but it's a really an unused space, but it's quite large.
And there would be no fire issues, I take it, in respect to that?
Well,
That has been discussed with Mr. Thompson also.
he did give us some advice about how it had to be locked up and things like that, but
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the idea with the oven would be locked when it's not in use, and the discussion was about a locked fire shed as well, firewood.
Well, I'm sorry, but one other follow-up, and that has to do with what about in the event there is a fire? Is that all examined also as to whether there is safety precautions there, or should the oven get out of control?
And I know looking at City of Toronto, I'll change that, had some very good details of what they expect and for things like fire extinguishers on site and things like that. So that would be part of the installation, would be to have a fire extinguisher readily available and water available, because there's outdoor taps there as
yeah,
well.
there's a hose already that reaches to there.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next deputation that I'm going to receive is Ron Jenkins. And Ron, you were here at the last meeting. Anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
It's on already.
Oh, okay.
You're good to go.
Hi, my name's Ron Jenkins. I came here 6 years ago from Guelph, Ontario, and I'm in a wheelchair, and my wheelchair's downstairs, and your elevator still won't take my wheelchair, so I had to walk up. But why I'm here is, since I've been here, a lot of our friends that have a wheelchair, we meet at Tim Hortons and we discuss what bad streets to look out for. It's because our wheelchairs can't take the damage that the sidewalks are so pitiful. Okay, I just came to ask if you guys could fix the sidewalks. It's because it cost me $2,000 to fix my wheelchair. And the last time I was here, one of the councilmen said, why don't you go through your insurance? Well, you go through your insurance, you keep the insurance every time you put a claim in. And I said, it shouldn't be up to me, is because the people who pay tax, land tax, they supposed to have sidewalks maintained, the roads maintained, and that's why it was for the taxes to do that. And a friend of mine said, Ron, you won't get nowhere with the committee is because deaf ears, is because they tried it and they got knocked down. And I said, well, I'm a thorn. I will keep pressing until it gets done. And I'm just, you know, I love being here. This is a very good Parry Sound. People were polite. When I first moved here, an OPP came and said, you're new here. And I said, yes, how did you know? He goes, well, we know a lot of people here. And he walked me to the town. And he said, if you get lost, just flag me down and I'll tell you how you get back to your place. Because that's the first day that I came here. And I found the Tim Hortons. But I really want to see you guys do the sidewalks. It's because when you guys had the election, I asked one of your person that was running to fix the sidewalks. And then she said to me that they were making from Bull Street, 4th Street to the Hospital Street, they're going to pave it. And I said, okay, that's great. But why is it now all of a sudden you guys are doing it? It's because it's the election. You guys want to get voted. And we can't wait for elections all the time to get our sidewalks done. Disability pays the our wheelchairs to be fixed, but they keep saying, well, you know what? It's too many times that your wheelchair's getting fixed. We can't afford to do it this time. So then I'm stuck at home, can't get out unless my brother comes and picks me up. It's frustrating, and I'm trying not to, like, I get emotional, is because my wheelchair is my freedom. And if you guys take that away from me, I can't get anywhere to meet my friends or go to a show. So I was asking you guys now to promise that you guys will fix the sidewalks. And I will ask you all to take a journey with me one day in a wheelchair and sit in a wheelchair and go down each street that we go down, and you can see the problems we have. And I guarantee you, you guys will be shaking your head, because you guys don't realize how mental the sidewalks we need be straight. And when you guys are doing it with tarring it over, two things. Well, there's three things with it. One, it's good for our wheelchairs. Two, people with strollers, it's really good for them. And third one is your plow guys could go straight, and it will be nice to push. They're not going to be divot into these little cracks where my little tires hit that crack and it bends my wheel. And the front ones are the ones that drive my wheelchair to left to right. And I got the big ones underneath me. They're the ones that pushes the wheelchair. But when you get into spots that you can't get into, it hits them and it bends the wheel and chips the wheel, and then you got to replace it. And every time you replace 4 little tires is over $400. For them to come from Barry to pick it up, that's another $85. And if they can't fix it there, then they got to take your wheelchair there. Then that's more money, because they got to take your chair and take it over there. So I'm asking you nicely to please do this. And I will make an appointment if you guys want. The lady beside the mayor, she has my phone number. You could phone me, and I will set up a date for all of us to be on a wheelchair and go through what we go through. It's easy to just ignore because you guys could walk, you guys could get in your car, go places, but we can't. We got to depend on our wheelchair. So please, let's work together and get these sidewalks done.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Jenkins? Councillor Bachman.
Thank you for coming here this evening and your delegation. Just out of curiosity, in the group of people that you socialize with in wheelchairs, approximately how many are there?
We have like, at the most time, we have about 8 that we meet at Tim Hortons. But it's just that sometimes it depends on the weather. But the ones that were here before me said that they already tried to come through the channels and nothing happened. And I said, well, they haven't met me. I'm a thorn. I won't go away. Because I take pride of my city, whatever city I'm in, I will take pride of it. But when there's things that need to be done, I will point them out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anything further? Maybe as a follow-up, one of our public works staff could take a look at the areas that Mr. Jenkins is talking about. I think Mr. Jenkins also probably needs to know how much we spend on sidewalks every year, and that, you know, we have to live within a budget because we have a lot of different things that we deal with. So But if we can take a look at those areas and see what can be done, and can we report it back near budget time, that would be fine. Councillor Keith?
Yes, I was just thinking, perhaps the staff could develop a report
Yeah.
in respect to developing a citizens committee, a disabled citizens committee that could make recommendations to council as to some of the needs in this community. They would therefore be providing input themselves from their own experiences of things we may as council members not be aware of. So a report in that area, I think, would be helpful if we could have a report with an idea of developing a committee and bring that back as to the terms, etc.
You're moving that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor McCann? Any discussion on such a committee? All in favor? That's carried. Okay?
One more thing.
Yeah.
Mayor, you're just saying something about you have a budget, okay? You're trying to tell me your budget for 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. You're trying to tell me you didn't have no budget to do these sidewalks? That it's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and they're still the same, and you're saying you don't have the budget? Come on.
Mr. Jenkins, I'm not going to get into discussion with you on that. This is question
Well,
and
you just
answer.
brought it up. You said about you have the, you know, like, oh, like so much money per year. But since I've been here, the 6 years, those sidewalks hasn't been changed for the 6 years I've been here. So why are you saying that it's a budget? Because you guys don't think about the sidewalks, because you're only thinking about other things than the sidewalks.
Mr. Jenkins,
Yes.
I think your deputation has been concluded.
Okay,
I thank you very much for it. I think
but
you,
I'm still waiting for you to say why.
I think you have done very well tonight. Council has decided to have a committee, which I think is very wise, because given the AODA compliances and different things like that, we're going to have to meet by 2025. And we can better understand that. So we have many, many kilometers of sidewalks within the town of Parry Sound that have to be repaired and maintained, and new sidewalks developed as well. So we will take a look at forming this committee and take a look at the areas where the frequency is traveled, and possibly something can come out of that. We're not here to debate that tonight, but I think a committee structure can certainly take a look at it. So
Right.
thank you.
You're welcome, but there also one thing that I have is that these sidewalks that you see us on the road, and the OPP will stop us and say, get off the road. It's safety we're doing with the sidewalks. But if the sidewalks are damaging our wheelchairs, we have to go onto the road so that it doesn't damage our sidewalks.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your deputation. I have another deputation right after you now, so I appreciate you bringing this forward to council. Thank you.
So when do we get that meeting, like, or not the meeting, but the, how much you're paying out for sidewalks?
That can be relayed to you when that's sorted out. They're going to have to pull that information, okay?
Okay,
But they will get it to you,
okay.
okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next person that I had was Devin Wesley. Didn't know exactly what Devin wanted to talk about, but no Devin Wesley here tonight. Okay, so our next deputation will be Nancy Cunningham, and I understand Nancy Cunningham wants to talk about the lighthouse, so welcome. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and
Yep.
Council. It is on. Um, As you say, I'm here about the lighthouse proposal. So as I read through the many pages of the report to Council regarding the proposed bylaw amendments and official plan amendment, these were the things that came to mind. We're told that the only roof structure will be the elevator shaft. But what is to prevent future additions after the town is no longer in control and site plan is finished? Site plan control is finished. Surely these guarantees need to be in writing so that structures do not appear on the roof in future. And where is the commitment by the developer to preserve the 25 feet of trees that we have between the fitness trail and the property that he hopes to purchase? That belongs to the town, and I think we need guarantees that those trees will not be removed, hopefully not damaged either during his construction. We're told that there is supporting paperwork from the surveyor who visited the site and gave assurances that the height of the new building would not exceed the height of the first floor of Beacon View, but we don't know whether it's the floor of Beacon View or the ceiling of Beacon View. And without the surveyor's name and his written work on that, it really doesn't mean very much. There's no commitment there. I think it might be a good idea to check into the record that this developer has regarding parking, garbage disposal, landscaping. I should say garbage storage and landscaping. And I was curious as to why the planner's report, the independent planner's report, is called a justification report. Because justifying something means that you are supporting an action that has already been taken. So that, to me, means that the whole report was written to support council's actions to date. And so I was expecting it would be an objective third-party look, but it isn't. The majority of the members of this council were in office during the, I think it was a 3-year period where the official plan was developed. There were numerous public meetings that we were at. The public had lots of opportunity to have their say. You were also here during the time that the Trails Master Plan was written. Both these projects were approved, and we rely on those members who supported those documents to support the legislation that they helped to create. So I request a recorded vote on both of the proposed bylaws. You're looking very quizzical.
What are you actually referring to in this with the official plan?
There's an official plan amendment and a bylaw amendment.
Okay, but what are you referring to that? Are you referring to the fitness trail? Are you referring to the actual property? Because you got both things you're talking about here.
Yes,
Yeah.
they go in tandem.
Okay.
And I'm referring to the report that's attached to the council agenda.
Okay.
That with the comments by both the planner, the outside planner, and Mr. LG.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
Do you have any
questions?
questions?
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next deputation tonight is Josh Morgan Morgan Planning and Development with regard to the lighthouse. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I have hard copies of the narrative I'd like to go through for this evening.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
If I may, I'm just going to illuminate the site plan here, and so that it can be referred to through my deputation this evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Josh Morgan. I'm a land use planning consultant. I'm here this evening representing Greystone Project Management. I was here in July for the statutory public meeting, and the purpose of my deputation here this evening is to do three things. First, to summarize the primary themes or the primary topics and concerns that were expressed at the public meeting, the primary themes that were expressed in written correspondence since the public meeting, the steps that the applicant has taken in response to those comments received, and then a summary of the land use control measures that would be in place should the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment applications be approved tonight. So just to start off, to summarize the land use comments that we received, it's a thematic summary, it's not an itemized list. So to begin, there were concerns expressed that the traffic generated by the proposed development may have a negative impact on the adjacent road network. And further, that Salt Dog Road may not have the capacity or integrity to support the proposed development. So traffic was a theme. Second, there were concerns expressed regarding the impact of the development on the natural environment, including tree removal, the impact of Georgian Bay itself, and a perceived threat to species at risk. There were also requests that the town of Parry Sound hire third-party peer review consultants to review the traffic impact study which was submitted, the species at risk assessment which was submitted, and my own planning justification report. There were concerns expressed by the residents of the adjacent Beacon View condominium that the proposed height will negatively impact their historic views. There were concerns expressed that the proposed development would negatively impact the adjacent trail system. And there were opinions expressed that the existing official plan designations which apply to the subject property should be maintained in perpetuity. Questions were also raised regarding the viability of servicing of the proposed development. And finally, questions were raised regarding the potential for contamination on the subject lands resulting from the historic industrial land use. So since that time, the town of Parry Sound hired a peer review consultant, being Triton Engineering, to review the traffic impact study that the applicant submitted. The town of Parry Sound also hired the FRI Corporation, which is an environmental consulting firm, to review the species at risk assessment, which was submitted by the applicant. And thirdly, the town of Parry Sound hired MHBC Planning, Mr. Jamie Robinson, to peer review my own planning report. And Mr. Robinson, as you know, is here this evening. So I will now summarize the steps that the applicant has taken since the public meeting to address the comments that we've received. I'll begin with natural heritage. So the peer review of the species at risk assessment was prepared, as I mentioned, by FRI Corporation and was provided to us in early September. The applicant's consultant, being Riverstone Environmental, prepared an itemized response to the peer review and submitted that to Mr. LG on October the 2nd. The FRI Corp, the peer review firm, via email dated October the 28th, stated that all of their peer review comments have been suitably addressed. If I can speak to traffic now. Triton Engineering peer reviewed the traffic impact study, and that peer review was provided to us in early September. Tatham Engineering, who was the applicant's consultant, then prepared an itemized response to the peer review comments received. And Triton Engineering then confirmed by email on October 25th, 2019, they accept that there will not be any appreciable level of service or capacity issues resulting from the proposed development. And further, that any entrance or alignment site plan, and further that any entrance alignment or sightline improvements can be addressed via the site plan approval process. So both the environmental peer reviewer and the traffic peer reviewer were both satisfied with the submissions that were made. Thirdly, in terms of building height, the proposed building height that we were here to speak about in July was 14.2 meters. We've decreased our request from 14.2 meters to 12.5 meters. The previous deputant, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I'm speaking now to the surveying comment which was made. So the applicant hired LU, pardon my pronunciation, Mahan Company Limited, which is an Ontario land surveyor. They were retained by the applicant to confirm that the finished first floor elevation of the adjacent Beacon View condominium, so that's where your feet are, right, the bottom of the building. So the surveying company confirmed by certificate, which I'd be happy to provide the previous deputant, that the elevation of the first floor of Beacon View is 203.75. The surveyor also confirmed that the proposed height of 12.5 meters, so the height of the top of the proposed building, would be 203.6. So 203.6, height of the building, 203.75, the bottom of the Beacon View building. So the height of the proposed building, as confirmed by an Ontario land surveyor, will be lower than the first floor elevation of the Beacon View condominium. In addition to the decrease in height, the applicant has committed to utilize an earth-toned membrane on the top of the roof rather than just a shiny white roof. That would be an item that would be confirmed by the site plan approval process. And also the applicant has committed that there will not be any air conditioning units installed on the roof of the building. And finally, in terms of height, the site-specific zoning bylaw amendment that is before you this evening identifies the exact dimensions and the exact height of the elevator shaft. So the only protrusion from the maximum height that we're seeking would be for an elevator shaft, and the height and the dimensions of that shaft are tied down in the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. So there's no deviation that could occur from that. It will be enshrined in the zoning bylaw amendment. Regarding the adjacent trail network, the site plan has been updated to increase the westerly interior side yard, so that's a side yard that faces the water, from 3.47 meters, which was proposed in July, to 6 meters. So we've increased the setback from the trail. And this also avoids the need for a site-specific provision related to the interior side yard. In addition to the proposed 6-meter westerly interior side yard setback, the adjacent trail is located approximately 9 meters from the western property boundary, thus resulting in an approximate setback of 15 meters from the trail to the building. And I think the 9 meters is fairly close to the 25 feet which the previous deputant was speaking to. And through the building process, of course, the goal, which will be identified through the site plan approval process, is to maintain all trees off-site. So there will be disturbance on-site clearly, but the goal would be to not impact the trail network or the lands adjacent to the trail network. Furthermore, the applicant proposes to improve the trailhead adjacent to the northwest corner of the subject property. So the northwest corner would be here. Okay, this is north, this is Salt Dock Road. So the northwest corner is here. So the applicant, the applicant proposes to improve the trailhead with improved public parking, the installation of a landscape trail extension along Salt Dock Road, and a crosswalk to connect the trail extension to the north side of Salt Dock Road. So improve the parking here, improve the trail here, create a trail, and then create a crosswalk across Salt Dock Road. So these are enhancements to the existing trail system. And I felt like in the July meeting there was a feeling that the trail itself was going to be, was part of these subject lands, but the trail is not at all part of the subject lands. The trail is adjacent to the lands, and the proposal is proposing to enhance the existing trail system, and those enhancements would be confirmed through the site plan approval process. So there was comment, I'll move now on to just a discussion just about the official plan, the municipality's official plan. You're looking at the clock. I think I'm probably running out of time here.
You got a couple minutes.
I'll be very quick. Okay, so there was discussion about the existing official plan and the appropriateness of redesignating the lands. So just in a general sense, part of the property is designated public open space, which relates to municipally owned lands that are used for parks, open spaces, recreational uses, walkways, trails, and recreational facilities. This property is not used for anything right now. It is an underutilized vacant piece of land and adjacent to the trail network, but not part of the trail network. And the topography of the land makes it difficult for a public facility to be located there. And so based on the foregoing, it's evident that the town, it's evident to me, that the town has recognized that public open space is not a designation which most appropriately identifies the uses for these lands, hence the sale of the property and our official plan amendment application, which I brought forward on behalf of Greystone Project Management. So it's my opinion that the proposed redesignation more accurately identifies the land use which the municipality is seeking to achieve here. In terms of stormwater management and servicing, I'll be very quick. A functional servicing report was submitted in support of the zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment applications. There were no concerns expressed by the municipality based upon that first submission. A more detailed engineering submission would occur at the site plan approval phase. There is capacity available, we understand. And in terms of, there were concerns expressed with regards to soils contamination. I'm getting to the bottom of my list here. So the applicant has retained Soil Engineers Limited to prepare a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental site assessment. And if the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment concludes that a record of site condition is required, then a record of site condition would have to be provided to the municipality as part of the site plan approval process. We understand that, and we've already initiated this process. Finally, to summarize the land use controls available to the municipality should the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment be approved. The bylaw before you this evening, the zoning bylaw amendment, proposes that a holding provision be placed on the zoning. And the holding provision could not be lifted until the applicant was able to reach a site plan approval via an executed site plan agreement. And the matters which would be addressed through the site plan approval process would be municipal water and sanitary infrastructure, stormwater management, the color of the roof, restrictions to the mechanical infrastructure on the roof, landscaping, trail connections and improvements, off-site parking for trail users, any blasting if we're required. The parameters of the blasting would be identified through the site plan process. The site plan would confirm that the recommendations made in the species at risk assessment were adhered to, and the site plan agreement would ensure that the recommendations made within the traffic impact study were adhered to. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, if required, a record of site condition would come through via the site plan approval process. So should these applications be approved tonight, the applicant, we can't get a building permit yet. We have an extensive process still to go through to make sure that the commitments that we've made to you tonight and in July are met. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor McCann, then Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Morgan, then thank you for your presentation. Three things I'll ask here very quickly. You talked about reducing the height of the building, the traffic impact, and about guarantees, which I want to ask you about. So how do you reduce the height of a building? Do you dig into the ground to compensate for the height that you're taking away? That's my first question.
That could be one strategy through your worship. To Councillor, I'm sorry, I can't see your name from here. But
Councillor McCann.
McCann, I'm sorry, Councillor McCann. That would be one strategy. The other strategy is simply to literally reduce the height of the building, whether you take mechanical space away, et cetera, or it could happen by the grading of the building, for instance. There are a number of strategies.
Okay, and you'd mentioned then that the engineers reported that there wouldn't be a significant traffic impact. How do they know that?
Through your worship to Councillor McCann, if I'm not a traffic engineer, so if you can allow me to speak of what I know. Basically, they make projections based on other developments, similar developments, and they assess the road infrastructure of a municipality and the roads that are needed to be used in order to get to the site. So they project traffic volumes, and they look at the capacity of the existing infrastructure, road infrastructure, and they look at the sight lines. And based on those items, they assess whether the entrance is safe, and also whether the road has the capacity to handle the increased volume that would be associated with the development.
Okay, and finally, and this kind of answers one of the concerns that another deputation was made earlier this evening there from Ms. Cunningham. The guarantees, how will you guarantee to the people in that area that these conditions will be met? I mean, I guess you can put it on paper. How best would you make these people feel comfortable about what you're doing and promising?
It's a big question. I mean, I think that the best answer to that question is that that the commitments we've made in terms of the functional and physical development of the site will be controlled through the site plan process. Height will be controlled, infrastructure on the roof of the building will be controlled, the entrance location will be controlled through the site plan process, the trail improvements that have been proposed will be enforced through the site plan approval process. So it is the site plan approval process that is the tool that the municipality will use to enforce essentially the commitments that are being made tonight, and also the recommendations made in the traffic report and the environmental report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Borneman, you're good now? Okay. Councillor Keith?
Yes, I believe I have three questions. The one, first of all, is you indicated in your presentation there would be no air conditioning on the roof, but the idea of solar panels and heat pumps, does that play any role in this plan of the building?
Through your worship to Councillor Keith, the commitment is that there wouldn't be any infrastructure on the roof other than the elevator shaft.
Okay. Then the other question I would have has to do with, you mentioned about that crosswalk,
Yes.
and that would be something that you would be contributing to. What does this really mean? Is this just putting some paint lines on the street that's there, or what does that actually mean? I don't know.
Sure. I think that the exact details would be illustrated on a future site plan submission, but what I envision and what my client has expressed to me is that it would be extending the trail up to near the proposed entrance of the site, painting some lines on the road, but also probably some signage, on either side of the road to lead people across.
That was it? Yeah. Councillor Horn?
Thank you for your presentation. If this were to pass tonight, what is the time frame of the proponent for development? Thanks.
Through your worship to Councillor Horn. My client would love to begin building in 2020. That would require the approval of the two applications this evening and then quickly moving through the site plan approval process. It would also be dependent upon the timing of, if required, a record of site condition and how long that may take. So the desire is to begin construction in 2020.
Councillor Borneman?
Thinking about this a little longer, we have had issues at Committee of Adjustment with respect to the size of parking spaces and other Greystone developments adjacent. I don't see any place in anybody's report here any suggestion that these will be different than a standard size parking space as outlined by the town's documentation.
Through your worship to Councillor Borneman. The parking spaces on the outside have been designed to the standard of the municipality zoning bylaw. And the parking spaces on the inside, we're seeking relief of, I think from, I believe, 2.9 meters, I think the bylaw requires, and we're seeking 2.7 meter width on the interior spaces.
I would only say to you that more people drive F-150s and SUVs in northern Ontario than maybe what you're familiar with. That was an issue with the other building as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, I want to thank you for your report. I think what we're going to do is, while this is fresh in everyone's mind, we're going to go right to the bylaws so they can be dealt with. So I think we need Mr. LG and Mr. Robinson, is it? No, we don't want, okay. We will when we get to it, yeah. So just to explain to the public, you've been working on behalf of the town of Parry Sound, is that correct?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Worship.
And you're going to make a presentation. We're going to deal with the bylaws right after, so that if there's questions, we have you here, and we also have Mr. LG at that time, if needed as well, when we do the actual bylaws. Okay.
Perfect. So thank you, Your Worship, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name's Jamie Robinson. I'm a partner with MHBC Planning in Barrie. And just before I get into the presentation, there's just a few comments I want to make about the responses that we've heard already and the comments that we've heard already while that's fresh in our mind, and provide an overview, a summary of the retainer and the purpose for me being here tonight. So just first off, I've been retained by the town of Parry Sound as a professional planner. I'm a land use planner, a registered professional planner who's been practicing for 17 years as a consulting planner. Worked for a number of municipalities throughout central and northern Ontario. I was retained to take an independent review of this site. My retainer did not involve reviewing the process that declared these lands as being surplus, so it was strictly dealing with the two land use planning applications that are before us tonight, the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. We do know that there is a site plan process that would have to be undertaken as well. There was a site plan submitted with the application because of the details that needed to be reviewed with respect to the zoning bylaw itself. What these applications are really intended to do are to establish the principle of use for the site. Is this an appropriate site for a building of the size, of the massing, of the scale that's proposed with the site-specific amendments that are identified through the zoning bylaw? That's the question before council with both this official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. The specific details would be considered through the actual consideration of the site plan agreement that would be brought forward at a later time to council. Just on a couple of the items that were raised, one related to there was a question about guarantees. What guarantees do the public and the surrounding residents have with respect to the application and the proposed development? Mr. Morgan identified that the site plan control process provides those guarantees. Also, the zoning bylaw amendment that's before council this evening does specifically establish a building envelope for the site. It does specifically establish a maximum height provision for this building, so it effectively establishes a building location and a massing for development on this site. If the proposed development were ever to exceed those requirements, obviously additional planning approval would be required and there would be a public meeting for that. So the bylaw itself is an important component to providing those assurances to the public. And then, as Mr. Morgan mentioned, the site plan process as well does provide those specific details. Just to the comment about my report, whether it's a justification report or a review report, it is a review report. I do note, and I was wondering where that came from, I noted at the back that in the footer to the page that does say justification. That's not what the title page identifies, and that's not what the preamble to the report identifies. So I do apologize for that typo, but this is a review of the planning applications. Just want to make sure I got everything here. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of council. I think everybody knows where the site is. I'm going to try not to repeat what Mr. Morgan did, but make sure council's aware of, from staff acting as staff, what staff's opinion is with respect to the proposed development. So what's proposed here again is a 43-unit condominium building. What would be needed to support that proposed development is an official plan amendment to take these lands from a public open space zone and move these lands into a public open space designation and move them into a residential designation. And then subsequently a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment. And what that zoning bylaw amendment proposes is it proposes a number of things. It would add what's called a special provision to the property, and then it would also establish it would provide the provisions of the R3 multiple residential zone for the most part. And I'm going to go through each one of those items and provide you with an opinion with respect to those. So first off, on the official plan, that modification to the official plan relates to Schedule A of the official plan, and it's to take it again to that high-density residential designation. You'll see in the staff report, or in the report that we prepared, that we do take a look at that designation and what the intent of that open space designation is, and these lands aren't reflective. That open space designation is intended to identify municipal facilities and parks, and these lands, again, are not being currently used for a park. We did ask the municipal staff whether there's any park plans that exist or recreation master plans for the city. There was some historic documents, and these lands aren't identified in any of those documents for future parkland purposes in the municipality. So just in terms of the zoning bylaw amendment, there's a number of different modifications that are proposed to the zoning bylaw. The original public meeting identified, I believe it was a height of about 14 meters that was proposed. That height has since been identified as 12.5 meters that's necessary to support the proposed development. And how height's measured is important. Height is measured as the average finished grade that is from the front yard. So in this case, the front yard is the yard that abuts Salt Dock Road. What this figure identifies, and this was a figure that was provided by the proponents, and I'll just show you on the screen up here, is this was the figure that was produced by the surveyor. The elevations that were provided in red, we've added these elevations based on the information that the surveyors provided to the proponent. So this is the Beacon View condominium. This is effectively the slope, and this building's the proposed building that's under consideration today. As Mr. Morgan identified, the elevation of the floor is 203.75, and the elevation of the roof of the building is 203.6. So back to the question of what assurances do the residents have that those elevations would be maintained. Those elevations would be encapsulated in the site plan agreement, and the zoning bylaw itself specifies the maximum height of 12.5 meters. So that's what all this information is prefaced on, and that, in my opinion, does provide both the residents, the developers, and as well as council with an understanding of what the maximum permitted height would be on the property. As far as the structure that's on the roof, there's also been a proposed, the elevator shaft is proposed to extend above the roof line. We wanted to include within the bylaw the specifics of that structure to make sure that it was limited in scale. So those specifics in these items right here are specifically included in the bylaw amendment. So there's a maximum size for that elevator shaft that's included. If they want to make an elevator shaft that's bigger than that, they would have to apply for planning approval, either A, through the Committee of Adjustment, or B, through a zoning bylaw amendment to modify that.
Do you want to take questions now or after from council?
I'm happy. I'm in your hands. Whatever.
Okay. Councilor Boardman.
I'm just wondering if you can identify at this point where in relationship to the building the elevator shaft is going to be, and where that lines up with the property behind.
So through your worship to the counselor, I don't know the exact location right now, and the bylaw doesn't specify the location on that roof structure. But what the bylaw does is establish a maximum size of that. So the maximum size, again, we've identified the north-south dimension and then an east-west dimension, so that the north-south dimension is actually narrower or smaller than the east-west dimension, which is more the north-south dimension, I believe, is more impactful in the views than the other dimensions. So we ensured that it was dimensioned accordingly.
Councilor McCann?
Thank you. I wanted to clarify why I was asking for guarantees was because in the past, and this is no indication or reflection on your company or your professionalism, we've had people in the past who thought it was easier to ask for forgiveness rather than for permission, and that's why I'm very concerned about guarantees here this evening.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the second amendment that's, we've addressed the elevator structure. The next amendment that's identified relates to the front yard and the open space the landscaped area that's required to be identified in the front yard. The bylaw requires 50%. The proposed reduction is to 29%. So what we've identified here on this figure is the area of the front yard is effectively everything to the north of where the building is, because again, the front yard is from the street. So in this case, Salt Dock Road. In that area, there's some parking, there's some snow storage, and then there's some landscaped open space in this area. The building itself, I'll call the site somewhat unique in that the building doesn't really focus towards the street. The building really is focused towards the waterfront and towards the trail. So there is this, through the site plan process, we will require some landscaping in that front yard of the site. But that's one of the proposed modifications to the bylaw, and in our opinion, that proposed modification is appropriate in this instance. Another amendment that's proposed is your bylaw does not permit parking spaces in the front yard. So these are the parking spaces that would exist in the front yard. Given the elevation changes and the uniqueness of the site, we believe the location of the parking spaces in this instance in the front yard are appropriate. The proposed modification to the parking standards, so the outdoor parking spaces are proposed to be 3 meters by 6 meters. That's the requirement of the zoning bylaw. The proposed reduction inside the building for the underground parking is 2.7 meters by 6 meters. The parking, again, not all parking can be provided inside. There is a requirement for outdoor parking in this instance, or a necessity for outdoor parking. So some residents would have to park outside, others would be available to park inside. It would be somewhat buyer beware in terms of the size of vehicle versus the parking space that exists. We did look at other municipalities and what the parking space requirements are in other municipalities. So we did look at in terms of other municipalities that have the 2.7 by 6 meter parking space size, and I'll go from south to north. We looked at Newmarket, Barrie, Muskoka Lakes, and as well as Huntsville all allow for the 2.7 meter width parking space. So there are examples of central or northern Ontario municipalities that also do have the 2.7 meter parking space width as proposed in this instance. And as it's inside, we believe it's appropriate in this instance. And the benefit here is they're not seeking it across the board. There is an opportunity for some standard spaces that exist outside. One of the key aspects to this proposal is the use of the holding symbol. And what a holding symbol is it's added to a zoning bylaw amendment. The Planning Act allows for a holding symbol to be added. And it's effectively provides some I'll call them quote unquote conditions that need to be satisfied before a building permit can be issued for a property. So what the holding symbol identifies in this instance is that site plan control is required prior to the issuance of a building permit. This municipality does have a site plan control bylaw that would require that anyways, But we wanted to include in the holding symbol the very specific requirements that are necessary in order for that holding symbol to be removed. Reason being is that a number of those, the reasons are for the holding symbol and the reasons to include in the site plan agreement reflect the public comments that have been provided to date and the uniqueness of those. So we want to make sure that the site plan agreement encapsulates all of those various requirements. And again, we believe that gives peace of mind to the public and to council, and as well as the developer about what the requirements are for the removal of that holding symbol. So what the holding symbol requires is the site plan agreement to include, again, is items such as the servicing needs to be confirmed. What was provided as part of these applications that you're considering tonight is what I'll call a higher level servicing review. It identifies from a principal perspective that the site can be serviced, but the details or the nuts and bolts are to be ironed out through the site plan process. So a detailed servicing report would be considered and reviewed by staff at that stage. It'll include items such as the design requirements related to roof structures, mechanical restrictions on mechanical requirements in the roof. And again, to this, the item of assurances, because all of that information has to be built right into the site plan agreement, that's a legal binding agreement between the property owner and the municipality and any future property owners, because it's an agreement registered on title. And if the agreement's broken, then the town can require the site to be rectified and brought into compliance with the site plan agreement. So there is a mechanism for enforcement of site plan agreements as well. So again, just some of the additional requirements. We're not sure if blasting is required. If it is, I think it's appropriate that there's a blasting plan outlined. We think that provides some protection to the neighboring property owners. There might be some pre-blast studies required, for example, to identify existing conditions. The identification of trail conditions, although it's on the site plan that's been proposed right now, that's a preliminary site plan, so we want to make sure that the future site plan does follow through with those trail connections. We think it's an important component of the development, and it's clearly in the public interest for the town to facilitate those trail connections between the Rotary Trail and the trail to the north. And then also included in the site plan agreement are all recommendations from all of the supporting studies. The supporting study dealing with endangered and threatened species, and as well as the recommendations from the traffic impact brief. So just in terms of the key items that were brought to our attention through the public comments and some of the key considerations that we had related to the density of development potentially being too significant or too high. We believe that we've reviewed this application in the context of the surrounding development. There's a number of high density developments in the area. We think this proposed development does make efficient use of existing infrastructure and is appropriate both from a scale perspective and a density perspective, and is compatible with surrounding land uses. The height, I've already mentioned this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but this proposed development does take into consideration the height of the neighboring development to the east, and there will be, although there will be a change to the site, there will be trees removed. There is proposed to be a new building there if these amendments proceed. But we believe there's been some steps taken to ensure that some views are protected for the existing condominium in the area. Trail connection and parkland, I've already provided you with an opinion with respect to those, but we believe that there's been an adequate consideration for these aspects of the proposed development. Traffic and parking, these were other concerns that were identified. Again, there was a study completed, and that study did identify that there's the existing transportation infrastructure in the area is sufficient to support the additional demand that would be created by the proposed development, and that the parking requirements that exist on the site do exceed the minimum requirements of the zoning bylaw from a space perspective. From an endangered and threatened species perspective, there was a report prepared that did identify some whether or not endangered or threatened species would be on the site. That was peer reviewed by the municipality's consultant, and it was determined that there's a very low likelihood of endangered and threatened species on the site. There is a requirement in the report for a timing window. We recommend that timing window be included in the site plan agreement so that the works can't be undertaken within that timing window. So in conclusion, we have undertaken this just provides sort of a high-level review of the report. The report does include a comment summary table where we've reviewed all of the comments that were submitted and provided a response to those comments. We thought it was, given the nature of comments received and the number, it didn't really do justice to provide a thematic approach to council. We wanted to demonstrate that we'd had taken an independent look at each one of those comments and had considered them. Having reviewed the official plan, having reviewed the growth plan for Northern Ontario and the provincial policy statement, we do believe that the proposed development is consistent with the PPS and conforms with both the growth plan and the town's official plan and would represent good land use planning. There have been a number of modifications that have been made to the proposed development and to the bylaw since the zoning bylaw amendment since the public meeting to address a number of the comments that have been provided as well. So with that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions from council, I can do my best to try to answer those. So thank you for your time.
I want to thank you for the report. I also want to thank you for going through all of those submissions and providing the comments that you did. I thought that was really, really good. And after talking to Mr. Elgie, something we may put into practice during other bylaws and that sort of thing, so that we have a very concise report of comments that were made and questions. And I thank you for doing that. Are there any further questions from council? Nope. Okay, thank you. Yes.
So just upon hearing the public comments and reviewing the bylaw, one thing I think we should probably note in the bylaw by quick amendment is adding a line that inserts a limit of 43 units to the subject property. I have wording drafted up here. That would be assurance to all the concerned citizens that it would be limited to what the application is. And in that way, when they file for a site plan amendment, it would be done in that manner.
Is that in 10.2.2A or is that in 10.2.2B?
That is in 10.2.2C.
Oh, C. We don't.
It is the zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay, B.
Oh, B, okay.
B, yeah.
So I will bring up the text if you don't mind, so that way.
Yep, that would be great. I'll so we'll deal with A first. Okay, so moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Backman, that bylaw number 2019-6991 being a bylaw to adopt official plan amendment number 2, part of block Q of plan 123 and portion of part 7 of 42R 129 be considered as read a first time. All in favor? We will once we get to it. Yep. That was carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Council. We'll find it. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Bachman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. When we come to the vote, because we'll have questions first, is council in favor of having a recorded vote? Okay, good. Questions? Councilor McCann.
I know we've heard a lot from various ratepayers, and there are a lot of people that live in that area, people that I know and respect and like very much. I'm supporting this deal because I think we need the tax base, we need the housing, We need the housing that will provide the employment recruitment incentives for professionals, skilled labor, doctors, nurses. I'm always hearing complaints on the street that Parry Sound never grows, and this is an opportunity to do that. Some of us, I know myself, ran for council on seeking such growth, and I firmly believe that this is something that we need. So I would support this.
Anything further? I'll call the vote. Ms. Herdman? You ask for, you start with, you might want to grab a resolution and just go down the list. Right, okay. So just call out their name and ask whether they're in favor or not.
Councillor Backman,
Yes.
Councillor Borneman, Councillor Burden,
Yes.
Councillor Horn,
Yes.
Councillor Keith,
Yes.
Councillor McCann,
Yes?
and Mayor McGarvey.
Yes. Okay, that's carried. That up there for later. Okay. Okay. But we need the mover and second for the amendment. So moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn, that bylaw number 2019-6992, being a bylaw to amend bylaw, excuse me just for a moment, please, because it's being picked up on the microphone and people need to hear. So again, it was moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that bylaw number 2019-6992, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2004-4653, the zoning bylaw as amended, for part of Block Q of Plan 123 and a portion of Part 742R129, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. And again, is council willing to have a recorded vote? Yep. We'll deal with that. Okay. So it has been suggested that we have an amendment for this, and the amendment reads, despite section 8.2 of the bylaw 2004-4653 as amended, the property shall be limited to a maximum of 43 apartment dwelling units. May I have a mover and seconder for that amendment? Councillor Keith and Councillor McCann. Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Horn.
Just a clarification, the term apartment, is that the same as condominiums or apartments? I'm not sure.
Through your worship to the councillor, the apartment just refers from a planning context to the type of unit in the zoning bylaw, but the tenure of unit, whether it's rental or condominium, that's an ownership type of tenure, but it's in reference to the zoning bylaw.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Amendment's carried. Okay, any discussion on the bylaw as amended? Seeing none, go ahead.
Councillor Backman,
Yes.
Councillor Borneman, Councillor Burden,
Yes.
Councillor Horn,
Yes.
Councillor Keith,
Yes.
Councillor McCann,
Yes?
Mayor McGarvey.
Yes. And that's carried. Okay. Mr. Robinson, thank you very much. Okay. I want to thank everyone that attended tonight. I think we'll have a 5-minute recess and then we'll do reports.
Am I shutting this down? I don't know if it's gonna come. Okay.
It's recording? Okay, we're back online. So we're going to start with now, since we've dealt with the zoning bylaws, we're going to go to councilors' reports, and we'll start with Councilor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councilors, staff, and the public. My report will be short. I attended Remembrance Day, and certainly that was a solemn occasion, and certainly the mayor and Pastor Moore and all those who participated and all those who attended that day, everybody certainly did their part to certainly recognize the sacrifices that have been made. I've also attended the Committee of Adjustment training. That was certainly appreciated, just to update me and get me brushed up to hopefully be able to make more knowledgeable decisions. And I just wanted to do a quick notification for other people to remember Light Up the Park is coming on the 22nd, and I would say do your best to be there by 5:45, and I think you'll be amazed to see what the town staff, what is happening this year. I think it's just going to be really spectacular. Please don't forget about the CPR train and on the 29th, and also the Santa Claus parade on the 30th. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Burden.
Very brief report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I haven't attended any meetings since our last council meeting because I was out of town most of the time, and as a result, I missed the monthly meeting of the Downtown Business Association. On reviewing the minutes of that meeting, I see that our executive administrator, Susan Hersina, has tendered her resignation effective February the 12th of 2020. Susan will be moving away from the area, and from what I've seen, Susan has been very dedicated to that position and will be missed. The search will begin for her replacement once some changes are made to the job description. And also from that meeting, the Parry Sound Girlfriends Weekend scheduled for this weekend, November 22nd to 24th, has seen 260 ladies registered as of November 13th. This far surpasses the expected numbers, and this is shaping up to be a great event for the participants and for the downtown. And the District Social Services Board meeting that was scheduled for last week was postponed because of the bad weather, and will be held on this coming Thursday, the 21st. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councilor Bornwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be brief. Bonnie's played Santa Claus and listed all the Christmas events. Continuing to attend various meetings at the airport with respect to the project ongoing there. This past week there was a report in the local paper with respect to Belvedere, and this afternoon I had an opportunity to speak to the CAO there, and wanted to address that tonight. The CEO and her management team have been in the throes of developing a comprehensive compliance plan, which they're implementing. In the interim, enhanced supervision and monitoring has been implemented in resident home areas, baths, nourishment, skin and wound assessments, and these are being monitored daily by the Director of Care. Plan includes a number of scheduling changes due to critical staff shortages. Marcia Rivers, the CAO, went on to say that this isn't just a Belvedere problem. This is the shortage of qualified PSWs and nurses is a problem across Canada. Long-term homes get the most attention, are the most regulated, and the inspection process has the most red tape. Hospitals and community agencies use individuals without W certificates for personal care, whereas long-term care homes cannot. So as we move forward, board and management are doing their best and are concerned about this and want the families whose folks are at Belvedere to know that we're doing the best we can to provide the best care possible moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow council, staff, and the public. Councillor Borneman, I'm glad that you mentioned that article in the paper. Well, online, it will be published this week, I'm sure. You know, there are a lot of people that work very hard at Belvedere, and the broom that was pushed around this week, I hope that people realize that a lot of good people get swept and caught in such a thing. People work hard, and we're dealing with a number of moving targets right now as we move forward and with our strategic planning. And based on what the province has done with dissolving the LHINs and going forward with trying to establish an Ontario Health team locally or whatever, it's a really, really difficult time right now for everybody there, and thank you to all who have been patient. And as Councillor Borneman said, there are a lot of people that work very hard and are very proud to call Belvedere their home. So just wanted to mention that. It has been kind of a quiet couple of weeks. The museum on Tower Hill will be hosting a special event providing an annual pass holders, stakeholders, and supporters an opportunity to get an advanced look at the Christmas exhibit, the model of the newly installed Ottawa Arm Prior and Parry Sound Railway, the museum's new display cases, which were proudly funded by the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and we have some new Christmas stock. So the public is certainly welcome to come in at any time, but we're inviting the stakeholders and pass holders and supporters, and that includes staff, council members, and mayors, heads of council around the district to attend, and that is November 22nd from 6 to 7 at the museum. Graham McDonald, the creator of the train model, and Norm Miller will both be there to speak, so certainly you're invited to come out for that. We had a meeting this morning. We actually had two meetings at the Parry Sound Public Library. Just did a lot of housekeeping. We accepted treasurer's reports. We talked about moving forward with pay equity, budget for 2020, strategic planning, and coming up next year, 2020, will be the library's 135th anniversary, and something is being planned tentatively for May 29th. That's a Friday, so watch for that. And also wanted to mention that from Belvedere Heights back to Belvedere again, mayor and councils of our supporting municipalities will be invited to a stakeholder meeting on November 21st, 7 o'clock in the evening, to discuss findings and recommendations arising from our recent core business review. So please keep that in mind as well. And that's my report for this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Backman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone, council, and everyone watching in the gallery and at home. This week was busy as I was participating as deputy mayor at two meetings. My first meeting was November 6th. I participated at the West Parry Sound pool meeting here in the town, and I believe we're getting an update on that later, but things are moving forward. On November 14th, I also attended the West Parry Sound Health Center meeting that was focused on, again, on the Ontario health teams and establishing that, and again, we're still kind of in limbo with not being certain where everything's going to fall, but there was a good presentation to all the municipalities there that things are moving forward. On November 17th, earlier this morning, I attended the library board meeting, and then afterwards I stopped in at the Stocky Center, and there was a climate action change event being held, and it was very active with approximately 110 participants. So it was really great to see our staff attending. And I really look forward to the updates that will be coming forward from that event today. And that is my meeting. That is my report for today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horn?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I attended Remembrance Day on November 11th. Just like to say thank you to the fantastic turnout, given how cold the day was, to support our veterans and our military. So that was a fantastic turnout. On the evening of November 11th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and just a quick update, 287 members present. I also want to talk about an initiative that the Chamber of Commerce has partnered with 18 James Street, and a big shout out to Jan and Jessica for their project of One Table Bridging the Community. And that is a dinner event on Monday, December 2nd. The first seating is at 5:30, and it is sold out, and there is only a few tickets left for the 7 o'clock seating. So the proceeds for this event is going to be shared by Community Living Parry Sound and Harvest Share in terms of our food collaboratives at both organizations. So if you can imagine, as you come in the Stocky Center, there's going to be one long table, and there'll be 80 guests at each sitting. So once again, just thank you to Jessica and Dan for bringing this initiative forward, and will no doubt help the community of Parry Sound. Tickets are $12.50 each and can be purchased at the Chamber's website for the 7 o'clock seating. And I too attended the Committee of Adjustment training on November 13th along with Councillor Keith, and that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, staff, and public, November 6th, I attended an Association of Public Health Agencies conference in Toronto on behalf of AMO and made a presentation to the conference attendees on the municipal relationship with public health, which we are very closely related to because we do fund public health. November 7th, I attended an MOU meeting at Queen's Park. November 9th, I attended with our MPP, Norm Miller, the celebration event and ribbon cutting ceremony at Serenity. They've officially received their retirement home license, and Serenity is now able to offer assisted living for their residents, so certainly congratulations to the team at Serenity Retirement Living. November 10th, I attended the Algonquin Regiment ceremony at the Algonquin Regiment Monument by the Fitness Trail near the Stocky Center. The ceremony was in remembrance of those in the Algonquin Regiment that have served and had fallen. The Algonquin Regiment has had a very strong history with Parry Sound and area, and the soldiers in attendance were very impressed with the banner project and also the statue of Francis Pegamagabo as well. As was mentioned, November 11th was the Remembrance Day service at Market Square Park. It was great to see a good number of people out to the ceremony and pay their respect to those that have paid the price for our freedom today. As was mentioned, Light Up the Park is on Friday the 22nd, and I believe it's also the kettle kickoff for the Salvation Army. To those that might come out, please support the Salvation Army with a donation, as they are very busy at Christmas time supporting families and children so that they can have a good Christmas. Also, nominations are now open for the 2019 Order of Parry Sound, our community's highest honor for achievement. This is the 19th year of the order, which has its motto, "They desire a better community." The order was awarded annually at the Mayor's Levee held on the first Sunday of January, so it'll be January 5th, 2020. And if you know a resident or a contributor to the town of Parry Sound who is making a difference in our community and who is enriching the lives of others in our community, consider nominating them for the 2019 Order of Parry Sound. Nomination forms can be found on the town's website or at the municipal office reception desk, and the deadline for submissions of nominations is December the 13th. Thank you, and that's my report. So, on with the agenda. I guess I should mention there were no ratifications needed from the closed agenda because there was nothing came out of that. Moved by Councillor Bachman and seconded by Councillor Horan, that in recognition of National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, and in conjunction with the half-masting of flags on federal buildings and the establishments in Canada, Council of the Town of Parry Sound directs that flags of the municipal office be lowered to half-mast on December 6, 2019, marking the 30th anniversary of the murders of the 14 female students at l'École Polytechnique de Montreal. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 931, moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that Council approve the Bobby Orr Community Center Championship banner display policy as attached to Schedule A. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman?
I see Ms. McNamara back there. I just wanted to ask if this has been reviewed by our primary tenants and if they have any concerns.
Through your worship, I can confirm, Councillor Borneman, that yes, this policy was vetted with the largest user group and the group with the most banners in the club, or in the community center. That would be the Parry Sound Hockey Club Executive, and they were quite supportive of what is in front of council this evening.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Keith?
Yes, Ms. McNamara, I have a question in respect to the banners that would be stored because they haven't been used for a while. What is there a time limit on that, on those banners? So how many years before maybe they are no longer stored if nobody claims them or is interested?
Through your worship, what I've come up with the curator of Bobby Orr Hall of Fame is if the organization, if the owner of the banner is not able to store their banner, Caitlin, the curator down at the Hall of Fame, will store on behalf of that organization those banners down at 2 Bay Street, down at the Hall of Fame. That's not to say that these banners would be on display down at the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame, but they would be in storage. Ms. Dyer and I, we have not established a time frame at this point, so I'd assume until she runs out of space.
Okay. Anything further? No? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Sorry. May I have a mover and seconder for the direction, please? Councillor Keith, Councillor Bachman. That the update report on the West Parry Sound Area Recreation and Cultural Center, Wellness Center, and Pool Complex be received for information purposes. Do you have some comments you'd like to make on it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments. It's a project that I think deserves mentioning for the benefit of the public. There's been a lot of activity and a lot of work done, particularly in the last few months. The due diligence is well underway. The 7 area municipalities and the First Nations of Wasauksing and Shawanaga have passed resolutions of support for the project, for this joint project. Following that, there were Parry Sound being the lead for the project, submitted a grant application which was due November 12th. The application was for a $32 million project. 4-lane pool and a bunch of other amenities. That information is available to the public, and there's some detail attached to the staff report. If we're successful to the maximum grant funding, we could receive 73% of that $32 million, which leaves $8.5 million to be shared by the 9 partners. So we're hopeful that a joint project coordinating 7 municipalities and 2 First Nations will garner a lot of support amongst the province and ultimately the federal government. As Councillor Bachman mentioned, the Wellness Center and Pool Committee met They've finalized the appointments to the Citizens Advisory Committee. The first meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee, there's 15 members. The first meeting is next week. We'll get them organized. They have a terms of reference. And even though the grant application has been approved with some, I'll call it preliminary thoughts as to what would be included in the facility, it's still important to hear from the Citizens Advisory Committee, those members, to fine tune and make sure that we're putting the right features, the right amenities, so we can do the right programming in the facility. The Wellness Center and Pool Committee also identified a preferred site for the development of the project, and that's the existing YMCA site. There's still a little bit of due diligence work to be done, but unless something surprising comes up, that's expected to be the site for the facility. It needs to be approved by the area municipalities, but the recommendation that'll be coming forward is the preferred site is the existing Y site, and we're hoping that the YMCA will be the partner that operates it. So there's a lot of work has been done, and now the next thing is we're going to finish up the due diligence. There's a governance model and some cost sharing that needs to be worked through, as well as an operating agreement with the YMCA, but it was a major hurdle to get that grant application in, because I suspect without significant grant funding, this project would be very difficult to get off the ground. So it was important to meet that November 12th deadline.
Okay, Councilor McCann. Okay, Councilor Backman.
Thank you for the update. Do we have any anticipation when we would find out on appraisals?
Through the mayor, they said spring. So, I'm going to say the March timeframe. What we, as a steering committee, that's the CAOs that are involved, at our next meeting, one of the topics on the agenda is how do we lobby, how do we activate ourselves politically to get some support around this application, because I'm sure there's a lot of municipalities are going to be vying for a limited pool of funds. So between now and the time that they make their final decisions, we'll need to activate some political lobbying.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Would that be something that would be put forth as delegations to certain ministries at the upcoming conferences over the next several months?
Certainly that would be part of it, and perhaps some one-on-one meetings if there's elected officials that have particular connections with members of ministers or members of parliament, provincial parliament.
Okay. Councilor McCann.
Thank you. Actually, I was hoping maybe Councillor Beckman might have asked this question, because she had brought this up today when we were discussing this. The title, West Parry Sound Area Recreation and Culture Center, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but the word area is redundant. And do we have to call it West Parry Sound Area, like 101 other things in this area? Can we not just call it the West Parry Sound Recreation and Culture Center?
Through the mayor, the reason for the name change was simply for the application. This grant program specifically excludes anything related to healthcare. And we didn't want any confusion calling it a wellness center. Yeah. And so the name was changed. It was ratified by the committee, and it was changed once. I take your point that it's perhaps a mouthful and the area might be redundant. I suspect at the end of this process, a different name will likely emerge and would be on the building. But this was a placeholder for the application. Make sure that it's a recreation application funding program, and we want to make sure that recreation was clearly in the title. But not a lot rests on that beyond the application.
Yeah, so it was recreation and culture, like were the two key words.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, I get that. And just as a follow-up, and this is a comment, and perhaps maybe it's not appropriate at this time, but well, I think, Mr. Harris, I think you've indicated that it's not a done deal until the paperwork is signed, but I'm kind of disappointed that the property on Parry Sound Drive is not the focus anymore, and that we're looking at the Y property. I was very happy when council decided to go ahead and purchase this property for this. I was very excited about that particular location, its close proximity to the school, the public school and the area. And I just thought it was the best place that could be. But that's my comment and opinion.
Through the mayor, a lot of the discussions were enclosed because it was a property matter. However, we had hired CS&P Architects, and they partnered with C.C. Tatham to undertake the due diligence. It was primarily based on costs. The Parry Sound Drive site is a more costly site to service. It's not a level site, and they had to go quite a ways back into the property to find a level site to build a facility. When you're talking a recreation facility and slopes of parking lots, you want a no grade or very minimal grade, so there's a lot of infilling, and it was just generally much more expensive.
Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Keith, that the report on the September 4th, 2019 Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, MECP, Parry Sound Wastewater Treatment Plant Inspection Report be received for information purposes. Any discussion? Mr. Brown.
Your Worship, if I could ask that one particular word be removed, it was my fault. I added the word drinking under the attachments on page 3 of the report, and I'll take full responsibility for that.
Page 3 where?
On the section of attachments, it says Parry Sound Drinking Wastewater System Inspection Report.
It's not good.
It's
that good, eh?
It is that good, but I was mixing metaphors.
I think it's in his R&R.
It's just in your R&R.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was removed.
Okay. Because it doesn't have anything to do with what I have here. So all those in favor of removing that from the R&R? Okay, thank you. Yeah, some don't want to, so they're expecting quality, right? It will be removed. Councillor Keith.
I was just going to say, though, if we had left it in, then some people would have got a little humor out of the report, because some of these things are pretty dry.
Oh. Okay. All in favor of the resolution? That's carried. Okay, item 934, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Horn. Whereas intake 1 for a municipal modernization program was announced on November 12, 2019 by the province, and whereas the program only applies to 405 small and rural Ontario municipalities, including Parry Sound, and whereas municipalities must submit an intention to apply by November 22, 2019, and whereas an expression of interest must be submitted by December 6, 2019. Now therefore, staff be directed to submit the town's intention to apply to the Municipal Modernization Program for funding for a review of the current waste management services with the objective of finding service delivery efficiencies and creating long-term waste management strategy, and that staff report back to Council prior to the December 6, 2019 deadline should an alternative project be determined as more appropriate. Discussion. Councillor McCann.
Maybe Mr. Harris could give us a bit of an update.
Through the mayor, this program, we got a letter November 12th. It's November 19th now, and we've got to give them and if we're interested, we've got to let them know by this Friday with an application by December 6th. So not a lot of time. We've met as a senior leadership team, see what projects might fit the criteria. They're looking for efficiencies. It's modernization. Primarily, what can you do perhaps to save money and create efficiencies down the road or cost avoidance? It's very specific. It's not revenue generation. It's not offloading to other levels of government. It's really focused on those efficiencies. And we thought the waste management is an area where whether there's blue box efficiencies, the number of bags you collect, how we collect it, wet garbage, there's lots of aspects of waste management that we could look at and we felt that was probably the most important. There are a couple of municipalities that are also looking at technology-related projects. I've had conversations with the archipelago. We've had a week to really look into this, so that's why I've left that addition. If something else comes up that another municipality is doing something, or we internally find something that we would benefit from, we'll put in the expression of interest this Friday, but if something changes, we'll report back on December 3rd so we can get it into December 6th. I'm not sure what it might be, but wanted that flexibility.
Okay. So are we moving forward just in the spirit of it then?
Well, if nothing else changes, we'll proceed with letting them know we're going to participate in the program, and if nothing else changes, it'll be for waste management services.
Okay, yeah.
In response to the conversations you've had with other municipalities and technology projects, is that like moving towards like sharing projects, shared services, or can you elaborate on that?
Mainly, the main municipality I've had conversations with was the archipelago. Internally, we talked about maybe there's an opportunity to we all use external consultants. If we were to eliminate external consultants and hire a staff person, but I think coordinating that across 7 municipalities would be extremely challenging. And we've got, I think, quite good IT support internally. We don't have to do anything. We wouldn't be the major benefactor. I think the other municipalities might. So we haven't had a chance to explore what the benefits for Parry Sound would be in doing that. Ultimately, it would be nice, and perhaps not through this program, if there was common systems. If we're all using the same property tax system, or all the same building permit issuance system, or different accounting software, if we're all using the same system, then it makes more sense that you could bring the IT people together, because they're supporting one system. Right now, we might be supporting 7 different systems or 5 different systems. Hard to get any economies of scale when it's organized like that. So I think we need to get on some common platforms before we can achieve a lot of efficiencies in terms of IT support.
Councillor Keith?
Yes, my question's along the same line. So if you're looking at efficiencies and modernization in reference to waste management, has that been a discussion also that one may have had with some other municipalities? So there may be for something like wet recycling where more than one municipality may be willing to work with us. So that's something like that. Is anything like that even being considered? And I realize you only got it like 7 days ago.
Quite honestly, through the mayor, there's been no discussions at that level about waste management. That's something that we've, as a senior leadership team, just discussed a couple of days ago. But certainly, if there's other municipalities interested in that, I don't see why we wouldn't. If that created enough volume to make it feasible, we would certainly entertain that.
Councillor Borneman?
I think this question is for Mr. Brown, seeing as waste management's kind of in his bailiwick. What are our 2 biggest costs, Mr. Brown, or the biggest costs that the municipality faces with respect to waste management? Tipping fees and trucking?
Through your worship, that's correct. It's tipping fees and trucking. Like our contractor is from Bracebridge, so he drives over here every day with his truck.
So now my question's for Mr. Harris, I guess. Is there any appetite in the area and with the volumes in the area. Is incineration a feasible solution to our waste management system in West Parry Sound? It happens in many other areas. Power is generated. I don't know what the numbers have to be, but it's, instead of burying this stuff in the ground in Michigan or southern Ontario, it's something that our costs are driving us to some kind of different outcome here.
Mr. Brown?
Through your worship, our municipality's garbage is far too small to even consider an incineration process. There needs to be a lot of garbage generated. So it would have to be larger than West Parry Sound that would benefit from something like that. Further, the approval process for an incinerator is a long time, many years. It's probably as long as it takes to create a landfill, which is usually anywhere from 5 to 15 years. It's very a long process. I agree with you that incineration is a viable alternative, but that's something I think that an area more than West Parry Sound needs to be involved with.
Mr. Harris?
Just through the mayor, I'm not sure the status or the legal, that you're legally allowed to incinerate garbage in Ontario. I'm not sure of the status. I thought there was a incineration plant along the 407 that was subsequently it's been closed. The one in Brampton, but I thought it was closed. But it's really a private sector project or a high-level government project. And as Mr. Brown said, I don't think the amount of waste that we'd have in this area would alone support it.
Okay. The one thing that could possibly looked at might be a green bin program. Program for composting and getting that, because that's a lot of your volume or waste or whatever in the garbage or weight especially is food waste. So maybe something like that might be able to be looked in the program with the other municipalities, because it would take everybody together to create a site like that. But anyway, that's, yeah. Okay, anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 10.11, moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2019-6994 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2011-6048 and bylaw 2019-6890 to authorize the execution of an extension of the existing curbside waste and recycling collection contract with Waste Connections of Canada Incorporated for 1 year ending December 31st, 2020, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the above mentioned bylaw, the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, all right. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2019-6984, that council authorized the execution of a contract with Bernie Filatro, janitorial, for custodial services of the municipal office and council chambers setup, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Backman, the council authorizes the execution of a contract with Bernie Filatro Bellatros Janitorial for custodial services at the Fire Hall Complex be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Backman. The bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Well, Mr. Esty has been sitting there very patiently all evening long. I think the least we can do is give him an opportunity to, maybe I could ask you about the quality of the work, and from the report written, it seems like they come highly recommended for another contract renewal.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's absolutely correct. We're quite satisfied with the service that he's been providing here for several years, and so this bylaw is to also hire him to perform custodial work at the fire hall.
Okay, very good.
You sat 3 hours to say that. Very well, thank you.
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Este. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Backman, that bylaw number 2019-6993, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with the Parry Sound Area Founders Circle to support business innovation and new business ideas, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Backman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Horn.
Just an update from Mr. Harris. Just how many founders now do we have?
Through the mayor, the paid up founders, there's 20, so that's $20,000. I wouldn't be surprised that at least another 5 founders come on board, and it's $1,000 per founder, so.
Great. Just a follow-up. I did have a couple of founders just when they read the report, they just wanted clarification in terms of page 2 of your of the report that the agreement specified that the funds must be donated to the town, are held in a town bank account, and the town has sole discretion on disbursements. Now that's the direction we passed back in October 15th. So the question is, what does that mean in terms of the town having sole discretion on disbursements when it's described as a democratic process that the founders vote on? So just some clarification on that statement.
Through the mayor, that agreement is necessary and is worded that way to satisfy ultimately Revenue Canada if there's an audit of the donations. That was reviewed, Stephanie reviewed that with our auditors, and that was their advice. Because some people may want charitable donation receipts, and so if we're giving out donation receipts, then we need to control the funds. The practical side of it is, the founders aren't an organized, incorporated company, so the practical side of it, they're going to meet, they're going to recommend who the award recipient is. They will let the town know, and the town will cut a check to that organization. I don't anticipate any difficulties, but it's more just compliance with Revenue Canada requirements.
Anything further? No? I think this is great. Absolutely fantastic. Good work by everyone involved. All in favor? That's carried. Lots of signing later. Holy cow. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor Burden, that bylaw number 2019-6989, a bylaw of the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound to authorize the borrowing upon amortizing debentures in the principal amount of $727,779.50 towards the cost of the Stockey Center roof and hardy board siding be considered as read first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. By Councillor Burden, second by Councillor Borman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman? No? Councillor Keith?
Perhaps Ms. Phillips can just explain what's happening here, please?
Okay, so at last council meeting, council approved a bylaw authorizing an application to Infrastructure Ontario for borrowing for projects that were approved in the budget. So the Stocky Centre roofing and siding project, since that's substantially complete, this is the bylaw just to finalize the borrowing at a rate of
2.7%?
Sorry, 2 point.
I'm seeing 2.7%.
2.7%. So those rates are actually really low at this moment in time, so we anticipate that the rates will possibly go up in the new year. Typically, we get a rate just above 3%. So it's a good time to finalize that project, and also the 30-year debenture for the BOCC ice pad replacement, which is coming up next at 2.81% for 30 years. So the 727,780, that's the difference between the total expenditures and any grants received for the project. So the total expenditures were 1.3 million. And that's the net of a heritage grant that was received for the project.
Very good, thanks. Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Burden and second by Councillor Borneman that bylaw number 2019-6990, bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound to authorize the borrowing upon amortizing debentures in the principal amount of $860,435.56 towards the cost of the Bobby Orr Community Centre ice pad replacement be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor Burden, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? I think you covered off some of it during the last question, so. Oh, yeah?
So I'll just say one more thing. So right now, the expenditures, which is the project's complete for the year, came in at 860,000 approximately. And it was originally budgeted at 1.17 million. So this project is expected to come in below budget, which you'll see at the third quarter report, which is coming up next council. But I thought that was just some important information to share.
Super, thank you. Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. So moved by Councillor Bachman and seconded by Councillor Keith that bylaw number 2019-6995, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Keith, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019 at 7 p.m. and will be held in the council chambers, top floor of 52 Seguin Street. Public access to the building is off Gibson Street. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Regular and special meetings are now live streamed. Please check news and public notices on our website at www.parrysound.ca for instructions to watch live or see earlier council meetings. Agendas, changes to the council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings will be posted on the town's website at www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices prior to a council meeting. The public is able to view an electronic copy of the complete agenda with attachments on the town's website. Just search council calendar and the date of the meeting. Should you wish to receive the combined agenda via email, you may make that request on our website or contact the clerk at the municipal office. The minutes of the council meetings will be posted within 2 days after the council meeting on the town's website. Your TV will continue to air the regular Parry Sound council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. For Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. And as I mentioned earlier, nominations are now open for the 2019 Order of Parry Sound, our community's highest honor for achievement. This is the 19th year of the Order, which has its motto, "They desire a better community." The order is awarded annually at the Mayor's Levee, held on the first Sunday of January, which will be January 5th, 2020. If you know a resident or a contributor to the town of Parry Sound who's making a difference in our community and who is enriching the lives of others in our community, consider nominating them for the 2019 Order of Parry Sound. Nomination forms can be found on the town's website or at the municipal office reception desk. Deadline for submission of nominations is December the 13th. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.